Moving right along with the show and into our third segment on today's episode, Courtland Sutton and some more contract negotiations going on around the NFL. If you weren't aware of what's the situation looking like with Courtland Sutton, he has been at the center of a good amount of trade talks and speculation because of the reports that he wanted more money initially a few weeks ago, and also some other wide receiver needy teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Los Angeles Rams reportedly reached out to Denver during that draft process period and during the first and second rounds of the draft, how the Steelers and the Rams reached out to the Broncos over a potential trade for Courtland Sutton, testing out the waters of a potential trade that could happen, but obviously nothing did end up happening, and Courtland Sutton still remains a Denver Broncos player, obviously, not just because no trade happened, but because he still has 2 years left on that contract extension that he signed in 2021. But now he isn't present at OTA, so that obviously raises a bit more questions on how Courtland Sutton's feeling around the temperature on the team. You know, you have the quarterback situation, and just from last season, it all really didn't go well at all. Nothing really too positive to take away from it other than his performances that he contributed to this team. Still only 28 years old. He contributed a lot without really a consistent top-tier quarterback like a lot of these other talented receivers do have around his age. He still managed to put up 10 touchdowns last season despite ranking 56th in targets in the NFL, which is remarkable for a guy like him in the prime of his career. To be ranked at 56 in targets is pretty mind-blowing for how impactful he just appeared at some of the crucial points of the game. He had a good connection with Russell Wilson as well, and it always just seems that he could do so much more, but just the target share isn't there, and that obviously has to do with the quarterback talent not being there. Now some more uncertainty being thrown at him this year. You could probably still expect for him to put up similar numbers as he always has because this is now becoming a trend, but on that, you would now start to think that he would want more money like it has been reported, and Courtland Sutton, according to these reports, hopes to receive a new deal before the start of the season, but the leverage and the advantage really isn't in his court just because, like I mentioned, he has 2 years left on his current deal. He is set to make $13.6 million this season, which comes at the idea that you'd obviously want a pay raise from that because 13.6 as a salary. We just finished talking all throughout this week about all the wide receivers that have gotten their deals and how much guaranteed money they have. The annual salaries are just blowing all expectations out of the water. The minimum, and right now in my eyes, for a wide receiver one, which I believe Courtland Sutton is probably no less than 25. You can make an argument for $26 million if you're really above average wide receiver number one. And Courtland Sutton, on that salary, $13.6 that he's going to make in 2024, he's about $12 million short of that. And recent reports on the sort of money that he is looking for is pretty surprising to me. Just on the sources that they say he isn't trying to reset the market by any means, but he is looking for a raise that would pay him about $15 to $16 million per year. So not a big jump there in asking price for Courtland Sutton from the Denver Broncos. I know, again, they are pretty tied down from the whole salary cap circus that happened with the contract of Russell Wilson and how tied they are to him, pretty much paying his entire salary while he goes to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's an issue there to work out, but, not a massive pay raise asking price from Courtland Sutton, which raises some more questions in my mind and some more just topics to talk about. Really, the main question is, should Courtland Sutton deserve more than $15 to $16 million? I think for what he's done for Denver, I think he definitely does deserve that. If he's planning on staying with the Denver Broncos and really won't push for another trade, I would certainly ask for at least in the 20s, at least 21 to 22, because I think that way, I know he's under contract, but at the same time, the Denver Broncos can't go out and sign another wide receiver or really Maybe draft one if you get lucky, but again, that's a crapshoot. So to find another guy that's as talented as Courtland Sutton, I think you kind of put him in a corner there with the Denver Broncos and not really having another option outside of him if he really decides to stay. So to say that he's only asking for 15 to 16, I think he's selling himself short there with that asking price if that really turns out to be the concrete, price that he wants to make per year. At the same time, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he knows all the salary cap situation and troubles that the Denver Broncos find themselves in, so he could be trying to do them a favor there. It's just something not typical. You see, players are looking out for themselves, trying to ensure their safety and their security if something were to happen to them in the dangerous game of football. They want that security there, and Courtland Sutton, I think, can probably ask pretty confidently to get over $20 million, and I think the Broncos could potentially budge at that asking price, but they continue to have these discussions. Courtland Sutton not at the OTAs period. It'll be interesting now if he appears at the mandatory minicamp. If he doesn't, based on that information, it'll be even more notable if he gets fined or not. Some teams rescind the fine if they understand from the player's point of view and don't want to ruffle some feathers there. They rescind the fine and not punish them for not being there because they understand what is going on with the negotiations. So when they have their mandatory minicamp, that'll be something to watch out for if Courtland Sutton continues to be absent. And I just think Denver desperately need to keep Sutton because they also traded their other wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, and Jerry Jeudy, depending on how you view Jerry Jeudy around the NFL. They traded him, so really you're not working with too much other than Josh Reynolds, who I liked in combination with Courtland Sutton. It won't really do too much if Sutton is traded or just decides to go somewhere else or not play. They need Courtland Sutton. They need the depth there, especially with a rookie quarterback as well. Having Courtland Sutton will do wonders for Bo Nix if he starts, or Jarrett Stidham, or Zach Wilson to have some sort of success there with this wide receiver to have as an option there. So you need that to transition, make that transition a lot easier. But in saying that and moving on, or not moving on, but just moving on to a different sort of topic on this, 15 to 16 million also doesn't push anybody away realistically from trading for him. That's the other sort of side of this story with Courtland Sutton. Usually if you're asking for a trade, something the other team will look at is the contract. Can he fit into our salary cap situation, and can we afford him, basically, especially with 2 years down the line, he might ask for another extension. Asking for $15 to $16 million per year, not only does it keep teams there, but I think teams will be barging down the door if they know they can get a guy like Courtland Sutton at that low of a price, asking price for salary, 15 to 16 million per year. I think teams will certainly come more often now for the Denver Broncos to try and really inquire about Courtland Sutton to ask for a trade, give up maybe more assets now because they can afford him if he's really asking for that much. It makes you think now maybe Courtland Sutton does that on purpose to maybe lure some more teams in if they had the impression that he maybe wanted a lot of money and they just couldn't afford him. Saying that you want $15 to $16 million certainly brings more suitors to the table now that they know they could get you at a bargain price and be a very capable number 1 wide receiver or a high-end number 2, which is something else to think about as well. So at the end of the day, how this all plays out, it's probably going to be pretty slow moving because, again, there is 2 years remaining on Courtland Sutton's deal. But if you're the Denver Broncos and he's maybe not moving in a direction where you think something can be worked out, not looking or not trying to look at options to actually try and trade him, I think would be foolish because at the end of the day, this roster isn't made up of depth. Depth is not the word you would use to describe this team as of now. So if you're Denver, I don't think it would be too wrong to look at these other options, maybe in a trade down the line, maybe in June, or we're basically in June, I should say July, maybe August, and give some of these trade options, a chance to maybe really explore what you have out there. And if you can get a good return for Courtland's side, I don't think it would be the worst idea to actually trade him. Yeah, it does play into the idea that he won't be there for your rookie quarterback, and you could be maybe taking a step back in that department, but to ensure more depth and more capital you can work with later down the line to build up this roster, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea at all for the Denver Broncos to consider that, at least consider it, if the contract negotiations aren't coming to a point where you think something can be worked out. That's just my opinion on it, trying to see both sides of the situation, but asking for just 15 to 16, that could add and open up a lot of different options for the Broncos and for Courtland Sutton as well if he does end up showing up in mandatory minicamp down the line starting in June. But that'll do it for that segment. More wide receiver talk I'm sure will be coming later in the offseason that I will talk about, but for now we'll be moving on into another break. A couple more stories to touch on today's episode. Raheem Mostert gives his opinion on what he believes the Miami Dolphins have to do to end this playoff curse, this first-round curse that they find themselves in. Plus, the New England Patriots staying in the AFC East, trying out a new strategy in the NFL with their new rookie quarterback, Drake May, siding on the side of technology and incorporating that more in their preparation for Drake May. Find out more on what I mean by that and their strategy in just a few seconds. We'll be right back.